Very nice, Mitch.
You were going to say something dodgy there.
I wasn't going to say something.
You instantly stopped.
Absolutely. It's that moment of absolute terror. Like, this is going to come back to haunt you, Pawlacki.
I'm going to use this at your wedding. Oh, no, wait, I did that already.
It's the things that, like, here's what to think. The stuff that we put out there, that's made it. Just think about the stuff that hits the cutting room floor.
Like, that's out there forever. Your son, my daughter, will be able to listen to our bullshit for eternity.
Exactly.
Right?
It used to be the days when your parents embarrassed you. It was only those people who saw it, and then they'd wind you up about it for a couple of weeks. Now we've put it out there for eternity. Good for us.
Fucking hell. Yeah, what are we thinking? What are we thinking, mate?
Hello, I'm Nicholas Pawlacki, and welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Not Another Whiskey Podcast, the show where we bring you all the whiskey news from around the world, wrapped up in a bow and tied by the crafty hands of my spectacularly gifted co-host, Mr. Mitch Bouchard. Mitchard, how are you, sir?
Mitchard. I haven't heard that for a while. That's a Carrie saying, mate.
It is a Carrie saying.
Carrie's Nicholas's wife, by the way, and she came out with Mitchard one day. It was pretty funny. Wait, spectacularly? Is that because I'm wearing glasses? Is that the
It is, because you're wearing glasses.
I like that. Very good, very good.
I think it's because we were having that conversation, what's Mitch short for? And we're like, is it Mitchard?
she didn't think it was Mitchard.
No, of course not. It was a total joke.
I don't know. Sometimes. Good, man. Good. Just good to be here recording. It's kind of funny. We're having to do this over the weekend because we're a little bit crazy at the moment. But, to try and get an episode out every week, we've got to do these things. That's how hardcore we are to the cause. Yeah. But dude, I was looking at it just today, right, when we were kind of writing out what we're going to say today, and this is a bit of a random number here, but your 56th episode, mate.
Look at that. Right? See, to be fair, in all honesty, 56 shows is 55 more than I thought I would be able to stomach. So it's a bit of is there a trophy or a medal or anything?
I've got a medal in the post, mate. Medal in the post.
Speaking of stuff in the boat, I did get the cask samples that you sent me of the Wildmoor. Yeah, I've yet to taste them yet, so they just arrived. So maybe that's my consolidation prize, right?
Mate, crack them right now. What time? It's Sunday, so you got no excuse. It's 2:00 in New York.
It is, yeah, it is. I guess I could have a dram.
I don't see you dramming anything right now. Get them open.
They're downstairs. I've left them in the kitchen, so
we can pause this. do you want to come up with another excuse why you're not drinking?
No, you're trying to encourage me afternoon drinking. I'm like, come on, dude, come on. I've been outside all morning playing street hockey with Julian, my son. Nice. So I've mastered the slap shot, which is put that feather in my hat.
Is that with Julian or is that with Carrie?
With Julian and the hockey, and then I'm off to Vegas tomorrow morning. So
surprise,
I need to get
surprise. Dude,
all right, Cilla Black, take it down.
Are they not sick of you there? I mean, fucking honestly, why is it so often you go to Vegas?
Oh, you think that, but it's not really. It's usually like once every 3 months.
Can we do a poll of everyone listening, right? That when we do a catch up, and you tell everyone what you've been up to and where you've been, how many times it's Las Vegas?
Well, that's because it's usually once every 2 to 3 months, I think I go. But
spearmint rhino, is that the reason?
Is that a gum? Is that a chewing gum? I don't know. No, that's we're off to like Wakuda and places like that. So we've got some nice Japanese spots. Actually, funny enough, Jose Andreas Restaurant Group reached out to me.
Nice.
And we're going to do a super high-end. So they've got a Michelin star restaurant in Vegas, and we have been invited out to go and put together a super high-end, fun Shibuya whiskey tasting paired with A5 Wagyu beef and some amazing stuff. So I'm really actually excited about this one because, this is with Bazaar, the Bazaar market, but Bazaar Meat. We're going to go out there and they're going to like publicise it, and they're taking photographs and stuff all this week so that they can put it all up all over. And so when you're going down like this strip, there'll be these massive like Shibui come and get your ticket thing.
Will there be a picture of you?
Day.
Are you going to have your face on the strip?
Come and drink with me, Nicholas Palaki and Shibui.
Having my face in the strip is also what happens at Spearmint Rhino.
I want to hear, for the listeners right now, okay, I want you to do a voiceover of how you would advertise this dinner in your best American accent. Go.
Oh, well, we've not got to the full menu yet, so I mean, give it till next week, and I'll come up with something. But I'm sure it'll be like, coming to you from Las Vegas, the Shibui Whiskey Dinner of a lifetime.
You love the fucking reverb, don't you? You're all about the reverb.
What's been going on with you?
Mate, it's been a mental week. Just tasting after tasting. By the time I got to Friday there, I was honestly whiskied out. I was like, I do not want to speak whiskey at all this weekend. And we had a conversation. You're like, we need to record on Sunday. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. I wanted the weekend off, you know what I mean? I started off with a tour for great guy Eric and his mates were over from the US, so we ran about Speyside for the day. Then I did 2 tastings actually for fishermen. It's the handiest tasting I have to do because this amazing fishing hut just 5 minutes down the road, right on the Spey. So the guys come in after doing fishing. They don't catch anything because it's the Spey, but they come in and I just sit and spraff whiskey to them, and then literally it's 2 seconds back up the road to my house. But then I went to Glasgow, did a House of Hazelwood tasting for a lot of sort of high net worth guys from a watch shop right there, Mappin and Webb it was called. So all their kind of top buyers. Yep. Did that. Yeah, mate, and just full on. And then, you go to Vegas next week. I go to Singapore on Tuesday for Wildmore. So yeah, this is the reason why we're recording right now for what's going to be a drop, I suppose, Sunday next week. As we record this, we've literally just dropped the Wildmore episode with Brian Kinsman. So if you guys haven't listened to that, go back, have a listen to last week's episode. Really good. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Brian's a great guest as well.
Yeah.
Like,
he's so easy, right? I mean, just easy to chat to.
He's a good dude. Like, he's a great example of the community, I think, just around all of the people who make whiskies. Like, it's amazing when it doesn't matter what, it doesn't, like, we've all worked for like a few of the biggest companies, but it just strikes me that when you speak to some of these people, like, there's that consistency across the board. They're just good folks, man. Good to.
And it's that humbleness as well that he has, right? And you know, we've both worked with David Stewart. It's that same kind of vein as just being super humble, very down to earth. This is what I do. I just make whiskey, and he just loves it.
100%. Very un-American.
Indeed, unlike us two.
Exactly.
But yeah, mate. So I woke up this morning and I'm like, right.
Dun, 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 dun.
And I was like, what are we going to talk about on the podcast? No, wait, I was waiting for you to do it again.
All right.
That didn't work out well. No, yeah. So I'm like, what the fuck are we going to talk about? We're going to do another catch-up episode. And then I was like, well, why don't we have a look at sort of the new distilleries around Scotland? And the reason for this is one of the things I did last week was I went to, I think it's Scotland's newest distillery right now. It's definitely Speyside's newest distillery, which is Dunfail. Amazing little distillery just outside of Forres. In Speyside, owned by the same guys who have Bimber. I think we chatted about this 2 episodes ago.
Yep.
So, you know, it kind of made me think about where are we right now within the Scotch whisky industry and new distilleries opening up. And then to top that off, mate, I get a sample sent from Glasgow Distillery of my cask. So I don't know if I ever told you this, but I bought a cask from Glasgow Distillery back in 2020, just when lockdown was starting. And I hadn't sampled it yet. So I'm kind of gutted because I missed its birthday. So look, I'm showing Nicholas it in the camera right now. This is my new sample that I got sent. which I missed its birthday. So it was on September the 3rd, 2023. I missed its birthday when it turned legal. So I've got it now. But interestingly enough, this is an ex-bourbon peated cask. So from a lowland distillery, I thought I'd go peated. It's kind of like a mini Kalila, mate. I need to give you a wee sip on this when you come over.
Right up your avenue. I remember when I first met you, you told me your favourite Diageo whiskey was Kalila.
Yeah, it's got that smoky bacon. I mean, it's still very young. It's only 4 years old, so it needs a good couple of years in cask. Interesting.
That's Kevin's brother, right? Smoky bacon.
Nice. Yeah, it's sitting at 62.2%. So I'm assuming they filled this at 63.3. Lost just over 1% ABV over a year since it's over 4 years, I should say, since it's been filled. So yeah, interesting to see that. And then my friend Seb, you're going to hate me for this, mate, but Glasgow Distilleries sent me some nice little samples of their whole range, which is what I'm sipping on right now, because I am sipping on a whiskey, unlike you, who has a load behind you and not sipping on anything. Not having a dig, but just saying. So yeah, I've got the original Glasgow 1770 in my hand right now, which is all from first fill ex-bourbon casks and some virgin oak in there, 46% ABV, creamy, easygoing, unpeated, just smooth, good for a Sunday afternoon, mate.
Lovely. Well, on that note, we're going to take a break. I'm going to go downstairs to my kitchen, bring up the Wildmoor, and join you for a dram. And we are back, and I have a dram.
Yes. I knew I could force you into it, mate. That's good. Peer pressure from across the Atlantic. Look at that.
Exactly. So I'm going to crack into this 23-year-old.
So that is my favourite out of the range of Wildmoor. I mean, it's the kind of flagship within the range, but just so good. I think you're going to like this.
I like the vial. I feel like Indiana Jones. Oh, the antidote.
Is that how he talked and how he laughed? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
Oh, that's great, isn't it? God damn it, that's really good. Kinsman does it again, right?
Right. Not too shabby. Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. Right, so now we're both drinking.
Yes. We are both now drinking. Happy
What are you
days. Do you know, I was just thinking the other day, it's probably a while since the both of us drank on an episode.
Yeah, we've not had a dram in a while.
Maybe New York, when we did it together. Yeah.
You drink, to be fair, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but you almost always have a dram, and I very rarely do.
I can pipe down.
Reel your neck in. Mainly because I'm recording usually early doors, like usually 9-10 in the morning, and you're like at the end of the mid-afternoon or later in the afternoon or whatever.
And I'm a raging alcoholic.
Mostly.
Yeah, exactly. Well. What I want to do, mate, before we get into this new distillery aspect of what we're going to chat about a little bit later on, I wanted to kick this off with something not whiskey related. So on Saturday, I was watching a stand-up of one of my favourite comedians, Greg Davis. So if you haven't checked out his stand-up, You Magnificent Beast on Netflix, check it out. If you've watched The Inbetweeners, you may know him as the teacher from that, big tall dude, like absolutely hilarious. But in it, he did this sketch about funny nicknames, including one of his friends who brought a new bag to school. And when he was asked where he got the bag from, he said his dad bought it for him. He then got the nickname as Baghdad, which he still has today. And he's 45 years old, and he's got 2 kids, and his kids even call him Baghdad, which, so it kind of made me think, like, all right, there must be some, like, people must have some funny nicknames out there. Let's dig into this. So we put it on Instagram, and we asked some of you to give us sort of your best nicknames that you've heard. So I'm going to kick this off with a few. First one we had was from Big Al, the shopper's pal, aka Alan Moth from Larkfire, you've had on the show before. He said it was a buyer in retail who was actually called Champagne. That was his real name, but he got called Prosecco when sales were down.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that was quite funny.
I like that.
Ryan from 8 Doors, he knew a guy called Baxter Campbell. Nickname was Two Soups.
That's good.
Might be a bit of a UK reference if you're listening from the US. Well, you get Campbell's soup in the US,
Campbell's, but Baxter's is another sip brand.
Yeah. Ian Bruce, I like this one. Nickname was The Exorcist, as he always cleared out the house spirits.
Oh, there you
Whiskey Studio wrote in, I've heard this one before, but I love this one. A guy called Wayne Bruce, his nickname was Man Bat.
That's not too shabby. I like that.
It's good. So have you got any, mate? You got any that you...
Well, when you told me this, I was starting to giggle because I actually I had a friend at school called Anthony, and he was like real short, real tiny guy, like 5 foot. So like his nickname was Shetland Tony instead of Shetland Pony, because he was only wee, but perfectly sized. My brother knows a guy called Hugh Ray, and his nickname was Hip Hip. Hip Hip Hooray.
You're right.
This. So then I started to look up, like, so there's, I don't know if you know the football player Fitz Hall, played for Wigan Athletic, Crystal Palace and Queen's Park Rangers, and apparently his nickname was One Size Fits All. Like, that's a cracker.
Like that one.
I've got a pal that whose nickname's Blister because he only shows up after all the hard work's been done. There was a woman that used to work in the Chippy in Perth, and she doesn't have a thumb, and everyone there called her Kit Kat. 4 fingers.
That took me a while.
I can see the look on you going, wait, maybe I'm not getting this. Yeah. And I have a mate whose nickname was Shagger.
All right, enough of that.
She doesn't like it.
She doesn't like it. Brilliant.
What else then, Mitch? I'm sure you've got a couple yourself. Have you got any more? Outside of the ones that people sent us, what about you?
I did a couple. I did some digging into this. I didn't have any funny ones, so I had to pull them up, but I found some pretty funny ones. So there was a guy, he was a short janitor at school. His nickname was Janny DeVito.
That's a cracker. That's an absolute cracker.
This one's been around a while, but I do like this. A guy with a limp. He was called Sniper's Nightmare.
Fucking hell.
Then there was one guy, right? His name was nickname was Kark with a C. So he went into Starbucks, said his name was Mark with a C, and they wrote on the cup that way, and it just stuck.
What his nickname is? Oh, okay.
Kark.
Oh my god, Kark. Oh.
Mortgage eyes. This guy had one wonky eye, so one eye was fixed and the other one was variable.
Are we allowed to laugh at these? These can't be like mortgage eyes.
An older electrician on a construction site. He was so old he was called Jurassic Spark. On that same vibe of a Sparky. Someone knew an electrician who looked like Elton John, nicknamed Socket Man. A uniform cop. He didn't leave the station, so his nickname was called Olympic Torch because he never went out.
Oh my god. Oh, choking in my whiskey here. Oh,
Funny,
it's good to laugh again, Mitch. Good to laugh.
Nicknames. Who'd have known?
Who'd have known?
Shall we talk about some whiskey shit now?
We should talk about some whiskey shit, yeah. Well, that was the not another part of the whiskey podcast. So let's talk about the whiskey part of the whiskey podcast. A couple of exciting things going on and not so exciting things going on. First and foremost, the minimum pricing in the UK is set to rise yet again. So the minimum pricing for the past 6 years, the price per unit of alcohol has been set at 50 pence, but the MSPs have voted for it now to be put up to 65 pence from the end of September. Move designed to reflect rises in inflation, which it absolutely does not reflect the rise in inflation. I don't know who their mathematician is on that one, but this puts a bottle of whiskey at 40% ABV at the minimum price of, it used to be £14, it's now jumping to £18.20.
Yeah.
This is wild. Obviously, Mitch, this is something that affects you because you live in the UK. But is there what's going on? What's the thoughts? What's the feeling in the hospitality industry and the retail industry around this?
Yeah, I mean, hospitality is on its knees already, right? This is the last thing that it needs to get people out. And, you know, I kind of understand it. We do have a bit of a drink problem over in Scotland. I think it was, you know, the latest statistics show something like 3,000 people in Scotland had some kind of disease, or it led to some fatality with regards to drinking. So things need to be done, but I don't know if this is the right way to do it. I think this money could be better spent potentially on more education, on support with people with problems, as opposed to just hiking up the price to maybe stop them drinking. People are always going to find money to buy booze if they've got a problem, right? So is this the answer? Will it lead to people just trying to steal bottles or booze more just to get their fix? Like, I don't know. And you look at something like whiskey, which for a single malt, I mean, arguably talking about something at £14, I don't know how much whiskey that you can buy for £14 these days anyway in the UK. But on single malt Scotch whiskey, it's not really something that people who have an alcohol problem are going out and chugging in a oneer, you know. Maybe on something like Buckfast or vodka. But yeah, I mean, and things like, to break it down outside of the whiskey category, a can of lager now at 4% ABV is going to go from £1 to £1.30. Cider, this is a big one. A litre bottle of cider will go from £2.50 to £3.25. So I suppose in the way there, if you look at that category, then it's good in that regard. But I don't know with regards to whiskey if it's a really good thing, especially it being the biggest export out of Scotland and the biggest money maker. This seems to be something that's going to be more harmful than beneficial for the Scotch whiskey category. So that's kind of my opinion on it. I realize something needs to be done with this problem that we have here, but I don't know if this is the right way to go around it.
Yeah, but out of that £18.20, how much of it is in tax? And then how much of that tax is going back into helping the other issues around alcoholism, like job creation?
Yeah.
People who don't work tend to, like, you know, that like the mental health issues around Scotland that could be addressed. The, you know, what activities are being created to keep people doing things other than wanting to sit and drink. Predominantly, I'm assuming predominantly not £20 bottles of whiskey, but like you're saying, some of that cheaper, easily accessible alcohol that is more likely to get pounded by somebody that's in that environment. So to me, this seems like it's the data probably doesn't quite back up the solution by the members of Parliament, and certainly the money that's been generated from it doesn't seem to have projects aligned where that tax revenue is exclusively dedicated to. So it feels like the expression in Scotland, you know what I mean? Don't piss on me and tell me it's raining outside. Like we get it, right? But we get there's an issue and that there needs to be things, but it's not a one thing. Like there's not one solution. So continuing to jack the pricing of alcohol hurts the beverage industry. But if it's not creating a solution, then, you know, since 2008 or 2018 when this started, the alcohol related deaths have gone up. So that would tell me that increasing the price and putting in minimum prices of alcohol actually doesn't have the solution that apparently they think it's going to have. Yeah. So it feels very much just like another taxation on the average person without actually addressing the issue at hand with alcoholism and the mental health issues around what would lead to alcoholism. So fairly disappointing, being candid. It seems more like it sounds like a soundbite rather than a well thought through plan. But as we know, you know, if you want an honest answer, probably going to a politician isn't the best starting point.
Ardbeg have come out with a new release, which is kind of cool. It's talking about Feijal's just around the corner. We're about a month away right now, so this is their Ardbeg Spectacular. which is Ardbeg's bourbon cask matured whiskey that has been aged in port wine barrels as well. So this says it brings a tumbling richness and an acrobatic twist of colour to the Isle of Malt. I do love Ardbeg's advertising, the way they bring out the different expressions that they do. I think they do an incredible job. But Master Blender Gillian MacDonald, interesting to see that it's not our friend Dr. Bill talking about this here. She says it's Ardbeg Spectacular is a high-flying spirit, very befitting of Ardbeg Day. Its years in bourbon and port casks create a spectacle of flavours, the likes of which Ardbegians, I haven't heard Ardbegians before, but that's interesting, will never have tasted before. So this is coming out shortly, just as we speak. It's a couple of days from coming out, so April 23rd. It's going to be £110 per bottle, or 137 US. So Feijoa. Have you ever done Feijoa before?
I have.
Yeah,
a couple of years back to back. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I think I went to it when it's probably a little bit quieter. I was there 2012 and 13, and it was fantastic. It's a great experience. It's definitely. I mean, there's certainly people that go there every single year because they're waiting all year round to get over to it. But for people who are further afield, it's definitely a once in a lifetime experience and well worth adding to your bucket list. Thoroughly enjoyed my time there, and it's great. Like, you get to see. I mean, we're obviously in the industry, so we get a bit more kind of backstage pass access, I guess, a little bit to some of that stuff. But it's certainly getting to spend time with the whiskey making teams, the master blenders, and to see some of the limited edition whiskies that are put out there is very, very cool. So Speaking of new things coming out, this might be one for you, Mitch, based on the conversation that you started on today. But Ayrshire-based Lochlear Distillery is now offering members of the public the chance to buy a cask of whiskey after only keeping it for private customers. So they've now expanded the private cask program. The customers that were on wait lists from 2018 onwards are now getting access to buy one of either two types of barrels. So you can get a first fill bourbon barrel or a first fill Oloroso sherry hogshead cask. All the casks are kept under bond at the distillery for at least 10 years. And then after that point, it can either be stored for longer, bottled under the customer's own personal label, or sold back to the distillery as desired. So pretty fun way to kind of look at cask investment here, where you can buy a barrel from arguably one of the best. I mean, John Campbell's the Lochlear production director. Arguably, this is a man that spent many, many years at Laphroaig running that distillery, and is certainly making some amazing stuff there. So this is a pretty cool opportunity as a family-owned distillery for these guys to create, revenue streams, whether continue to build out their distillery and lay down more spirit, but also really engage with those kind of die-hard customers that want to own a part of this process. And it's super cool. Like, the spirit's entirely made from their own barley that's grown and harvested on the farm. So this is really like a farm to, a grain to glass experience for that super whiskey geek out there. And that I haven't seen pricing on it. Mitch, I'm sure you've already asked for a free barrel, but
no, I haven't. But on that note, Daz and I did go down to Lochlear a while back. I think it was about a year and a half ago now, and we did an episode with John that you guys can catch up on if you haven't listened to that. I think that goes back to season 2, I should say. So that was quite a while back when we did that. But yeah, great little distillery, doing some interesting stuff down there. So yeah, it's what I think it's. And we talked about cask investment on the show. We're not big fans of buying from any kind of broker, but we do talk about the fact that if it's directly from the distillery, it is kind of worth a look if you want to go down that road and do it for a little bit of fun. Maybe you'll chip in, and that's exactly what I've done going back to the Glasgow distillery at the top of the show there, All right. So on that vein, mate, talking about new distilleries and the kind of what they've been doing, I mentioned at the start we're going to have a little bit of a deep dive into the world of new distilleries in Scotland. Now, I've been fortunate enough to visit a lot of these on my travels. When I came back from the US, I actually kind of made it my mission to go around a lot of the new distilleries and see what was happening. So as I mentioned, I went to Dunfermline recently, and I'm always super impressed. I say like 99% of the time I've been really impressed with all the new distilleries and what they're doing. There's only been one occasion where I wasn't impressed, and that was on Lewis. I left that place feeling, let's say, a little bit disappointed from that experience, but that's a story for another episode. I'm not going to go into that here. But, I think when new distilleries are opening now, they look at the whole experience, not just the liquid they're doing, but it's also about the visitor center, it's about the marketing, it's about the packaging. Obviously, for them, the liquid is key, and that's the great part about Scottish new craft distilleries. I think, in my experience and my sort of I suppose thinking of it, is we have some incredible whiskey makers out there that have been doing this for a long time, and they may have been working for some of the biggest companies in Scotland, the likes of William Grant & Sons, Pernod, Diageo. A lot of the time they go to these new distilleries and help set them up, and then they become the distillery managers there. So we do have the experience when opening these new distilleries in Scotland, and I think that comes through in some of the new make spirit that we're seeing, and some of the new products that are coming from these new distilleries. Now, if we look back sort of with regards to history, I would say this started back in 1995 with Arran. And I remember this and kind of being like, wow, that's crazy to see a new distillery. And it blew my mind a little bit, because we've always been used to this old traditional, distilleries being around since the 1800s. And to have this new build of a distillery, I was like, wow, that is great to see in Scotland. Kind of made me think about it in a little bit of a different way. So since then, get this, Nicholas, I did a little count here, and hopefully I am right on this. Maybe someone can write
fingers and toes.
Using your fingers and toes. Dude, it is hard to keep up, right? It's really hard to keep up with what's going on. But I think I'm close to this. 44 new distilleries have opened since Arran opened their doors in 1995. Now, wow. I know what you're thinking. Can I name them all? I'm going to give it a shot. Well, I'm not going to. Here's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to name them all really quickly, including the grain distilleries, but not the reopened distilleries that we've seen mothballed and reopened. So Brora, Port Ellen have just opened, and as we record this, Rosebank aren't far off. Cool. So from the newest one to the oldest one, as in 1995, going back to Arran. Here we go. Dunfermline, then we've got Portleith, Umnad East in Inverness, the Cairn Distillery, Eight Doors, Burnobenny, Falkirk, Jackton, Ardnahoe, Ardross, Bonington, Holyrood, Lag, Borders, Lochlee, Clydeside, Crafty, Kimberland, Lindores Abbey, Knocknean, Torvaig, Dornoch, Inchderny, Lone Wolf, Dalmunich, Glasgow Distillery, Glenwivis, Aris, Ardamurchan, Ballindalloch, Kingsbarns, Rassay, Arbiki, Leven, Strathurn, Eden Mill, Rose Isle, Elsa Bay, Avangerrig, Daffmill, Kilhoman. So Kilhoman was 2005. So there you go.
Great distillery. I was actually speaking of that when I was over for Gilles. That was one of the distilleries I got to go see.
Oh yeah. So, mate, let me ask you this. I mean, you being in the US, you don't get back to Scotland as much as you want to. I know that. But what was your first? I just talked about my first experience with regards to a new distillery. What was yours?
Kilchoman, definitely from when I was back in 2012 and 13, and then after that it would have been Kingsbarns. So that was
the first time you went to like a craft distillery? Would you say?
Kilchoman definitely, but it was they were just getting. It was a weird experience at Kilchoman, being candid. They were doing like a floor malting and things like that, but it felt like it felt like they put on more of it for the show, for the festival, which I can understand. Mm-hmm. and they were just kind of like really focused on getting their house together for that. But Kingsbarns was definitely the experience for me that was really special.
That's kind of, yeah, that's interesting because I remember coming over from California on a little trip, and it was a Glenfiddich trip, and then I tagged on a lads trip. We got this really cool spot in St Andrews, and I got a message from Kingsbarns because I posted something about being there, and they said, "Oh, do you want to come up and see our distillery?" And they gave me a free tour, and that was
Of course they did. And they gave me a free dinner.
But
He's just the guy that shows up like that. Steak and potatoes, please.
But that was like, again, going back to what I was talking about, Aaron, it was great to see that because I was like, oh, this is fantastic. This little craft distillery, opened up by a caddy that got funding to open it all up. It's obviously owned by Weems now, but really cool to see that. But I think the question I get asked a lot, we just rattled off a load of new distilleries there, and one of the questions I get asked very frequently now is, talking about the whiskey lock that we had in the 80s, are we heading for that again? What do you think on that? What's your opinion?
I don't think so. I think there's always ebbs and flows in the whiskey industry, as we know, and that tends to happen based around other things now. So for example, like COVID, that definitely created this kind of almost like gold rush. Everybody was trying to get their hands on whiskey, internationally especially. Like we saw all of that happen, and then as you've probably found out reading some of the stock reports and some of these bigger companies in the booze business that are coming out saying, oh, like we're not hitting the numbers that we thought we were going to. I know shit, because you were stocking up in 2020 and 2021, and warehouses were getting filled with product, distributors were getting overloaded with product, so now they're starting to kind of have that course correction. But as far as seeing another whiskey lock, I don't think so. I think it's a different run of distilleries that we're seeing here now. Like we're seeing some really, I'm trying to think of how, Cairn Distilleries is a good example to me. Like it's these modern, like even if they're owned by these older companies, like when you look through the list of distilleries that are on there, there's a lot of independent distillery owners on there, or previously independent bottles that are now owning distilleries. It's another generation. Don't get me wrong, you've still got William Grant and Sons on there, Chivas Brothers on that list, and Diageo on there, but the majority of that's only like 4 or 5 distilleries in total. The majority of them are independently owned distilleries or independent bottlers moving into distilling world, and I think that's what's exciting about this. And they're not, even these distilleries that are getting set up, they're creating new styles and flavour profiles, and that's cool.
They're future-proofing themselves, right? And I think when we go back and look at this whiskey lock that we had back in the 80s, these distilleries were just selling to blenders. Yeah. And they were just pumping out liquid. That was what they were basing everything off. They didn't see that round the corner everyone was going to start drinking Bacardi and vodka, and whiskey was going to go out of fashion. So I think that's the big thing as well. Now they're looking at the whole kind of, well, we're going to bring out a single malt or a blend, maybe even a gin or a vodka to subsidize that. And then they're looking at this whole visitor aspect of it as well that we didn't have back in the 80s. That arguably we did have visitor centres, obviously, but not to the degree that we have now with these new distilleries opening up. So they're creating ambassadors in every person that visits their distillery. Yeah. So I think there's that big aspect. And I think there's another huge aspect of it as well, in that back in the 80s, we didn't have so many countries making their own whiskey. Like we've chatted about on the show before, New World versus Old World whiskies, right? And we've got this New World whiskey that's come along since the 80s, which is incredible to see. I think we've talked about something like 30 odd countries now make their own whiskey. So we didn't have that before. And for me, and I'm hoping that, I'm being optimistic here in saying, if someone in that country is drinking a whiskey from their country, roads will eventually lead back to Scotch whiskey, and that's always going to be good for the industry over here.
I agree with that. I think what's interesting as well with what we do in Scotland specifically, and to some degree some of these other malt whiskey productions and other world whiskies that we're seeing out there, we're not all trying to do the same thing. And the point I was going to make here, I'm going a long way for a shortcut, but if you look at the wine industry, so if you look at what goes on in California, basically there's a handful of really influential wine writers. So guys like Robert Parker that writes for Wine Enthusiast and all these other kind of publications, and they've got their own scoring system. They'll find a flavour profile that they like, and then you've got these wineries designing wines to get high scores from these types of people. So they're actually manipulating the style of the grape, or they're making sure that the ABV is high. They're producing these very juicy, big, bold, full-bodied Californian red blends, but they're all much of a muchness. Now there's a vastly varying price point, but the wines themselves are all kind of geared towards that one flavour profile. And there's many instances where I've tried wines at $30 a bottle and tried similar wines at $250, $300 a bottle, and from a fairly well-educated nose and palate, I would say that there's not much wiggle room between the two of them. We're different in the whiskey world. Like we can have similarities and we use similar cast types, but every still shape is different. Which your new make is your baseline spirit is always going to be unique. And that's not like the wine industry. So what I genuinely see happening is as the whiskey consumer looks for new and interesting whiskies to try, they're going to be looking also for that experience that you were talking about, Mitch, like to be able to go into some of these places in Scotland where you can go to a bar and not just drink the brand that they make at that distillery, but one of the biggest whiskey collections on the market, or you can sit down and have a Michelin star 5-course pairing dinner. Like that's an experience whether you're at a distillery or not. So being able to kind of tie that into, you're no longer just walking up to a Scotch whisky distillery and it's all tart and here's some shortbread and we're going to walk around and there's pipe music in the background, and that used to be like, and they think about the 80s and the 90s, that definitely was the chit chat. Now I think we're really celebrating what makes Scotland so special is a modern Scotland, and these 40 plus distilleries in 15 years, and the 90+% of that is completely independently owned. That to me is exciting.
Talking about new distilleries opening, right? And we've got a lot of distilleries that are in planning stages right now that we've chatted about on the show. For me, the exciting thing is Campbelltown. The worrying thing for me is Islay. So I'm going to explain that. When we talk about Campbelltown almost disappeared as a whiskey making region. And now we're seeing potentially Machrihanish is definitely one that's coming online, potentially another 2. Hopefully we're going to see 6 distilleries in Campbelltown. If I was someone that lived around about that area, I would definitely be looking at starting some kind of business based around whiskey tourism. Little tip for anyone that's around Campbelltown right now, because I think what's going to start to really happen is people are going to start to look at Islay and say, well, because I'm down in Islay, I might as well tag on Campbelltown because there's now 6 distilleries down there, and it's a really up and coming place. I was down in Campbelltown for the Campbelltown Whiskey Festival. Absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend it. Smart thing is they put that on just before Fèis Isle as well, so people can do both of them if they want to. If they've got a fucking liver of steel and want to do that. Campbelltown excites me with what they're doing. Islay scares me, and the reason Islay scares me is I've noticed, and I've been to, like you, Nicholas, I've been to Islay so many times, and the first time I went there, everyone was so friendly, and I always said Islay is one of the most friendly places in Scotland. Last time I went there, everyone was still very friendly, but I noticed there was just a little bit of that kind of getting maybe a bit pissed off with whiskey tourism and the amount of people going over there. And as we look at even more distilleries opening on Islay, how is that going to be? How is it all going to work out for them? I hope it's going to be okay, but I know there's issues with housing over there. There's more trucks coming over delivering the barley. There's more just traffic in general on this little island, and it's going to get to this point where it's going to explode, Yeah.
Speaking of which, I mean, funny you should talk about Campbelltown, and especially about whiskey tourism. I've actually started a little tourism company there called Copper Campbelltown. So hopefully that'll take off. That's not an infringement, right, is it?
You saw my business model already, man.
I did indeed.
So a little sneak peek of
No,
that.
I agree with you. Like Hamilton is a beautiful. It's not untapped. It's getting retapped, right? Like so. This
Yeah, it's a
used
good
to
way
be
to put it.
this used to be the heart, the beating heart of the whiskey industry, and now it's kind of been retapped into that, and for good reason. Like it lends itself. As it did in the first instance. I also agree with you with Isla. It's a finite piece of land. Yeah.
Anyway, I want to move away from Scotland. I want to talk. We talked about whiskies around the world, right, and everything kind of leading back to Scotland. Here's a question for you. We've reported a lot on China and China opening a lot of distilleries,
China.
backed by some companies from Scotland. Ian MacLeod, for example, Pernod, both now own distilleries or getting to the point where they're about to open distilleries over there. Yeah, do you think this is going to be a threat to Scottish whiskey?
China's a threat. It's all been a threat. Yeah, I don't see. It's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see what the liquid looks and feels and tastes like, which I've not seen as yet in any meaningful way. I think that China as a country it doesn't have the same gravitas as other parts of Asia, right? So Japan and Taiwan benefit from the fact that they're known for producing exceptional quality in pretty much anything and everything they touch, right? China doesn't have that.
It's a good point.
Right? So when you, like, it just doesn't. Like, it's notorious for make it as cheap as humanly possible. It doesn't matter if it falls apart. Make it look like it's kind of good, but it doesn't really need to be good. Whereas Japan is the complete opposite. Like, people, you can talk about Japanese steel. You can talk about, the art. You can talk about the even things like manga cartoons and things like that. It's got like this kind of cult-like following of like super good stuff around it. And then on from there, you've got, the cuisine and things like that. Like, even if you just purely talk about cuisine, people put Japanese cuisine on a higher pedestal than Chinese takeout. Like, now, Chinese food is exceptional, but it's just not perceived the same way. And I wonder if that will happen with whiskey. People are like, oh, Chinese whiskey? And trust me, I work in the Japanese whiskey space, and I still see people like, Japan makes whiskey? There's whiskey from Japan? Like, I hear that. Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting. And I worked with Cavalan. I got to work with Ian Chang, and when he was working there, and Jim Swan, the late great, amazing, tip my hat to Mr. Jim Swan. Like, I got to work with those guys on Cavalan, and it was just a different beast. Like, the way that they operated, the way that they were building stuff. And it doesn't... I think what's interesting about China is that there's this rush with these whiskey companies based in Scotland to go out and fund some of this stuff. The geopolitical environment with China isn't as stable as it is with other parts of Asia. So really, I find it really interesting that people would go and spend hundreds of millions of investment into that market right now, when if you turn on the news, pretty much any politician will say China's an adversary to the Western world. So, like, it's certainly that's what we get here in the USA, which is a bit odd. Like,
yeah. Mate, that was good. We got kind of we went from nicknames pretty quickly to talking about world whiskies and
world dominance. I mean, world whiskey.
That was good, man. Good show. Good to catch up with you on a Sunday.
Always.
Nice to have a dram together as well, mate.
I appreciated that. That Wildmoor is wild and moorish. No, I actually then also had a little bit of the 30 killer.
Oh yeah,
very good. Yeah, those are exceptional whiskies.
Yeah. Good job, Brian. Good job.
Good job. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, listen. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully, you've hung around. It's been a little bit a longer episode than usual, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And I was going to ask you as well, Nicholas. What was your nickname at school?
I didn't actually. I'll tell you the nickname that my brother David gave me, because he's like, I don't know, just teasing his wee brother. So my Nicholas Polaki, but my nickname, like, as a kid, I was Nicky Polaki, and he just called me Nocky Polaki, just for no reason, just as a A total dick. Nah, I'm all young. He's an amazing human being, but like as a big brother, that was a pretty good tease.
Nice.
What about you? What was yours?
I didn't have one, mate. I've never had one. Well, not
You've
to
never-
my face, anyway. I mean,
Really?
I probably have a couple behind my back, but you know, I've never had one that I've known about. So, but anyway, yeah. So from Nocky Palocki and myself, Mitch Beshard, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see you again next time round, guys. Take it easy.
Bye.